Thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Try to move the mic down a little bit. Yeah, I would say that I'm not actually a tech guy, and I've always been in information environments, though, needing to move information back and forth. So I had to get creative and be a little entrepreneurial. I don't know what your all's experience has been, but I have never had positional authority. I have never had a budget. I have almost never shown up on an organizational chart, which is, it's turned out to be a really good fit for my personality, but it always seems really frustrating when you start off. So I'm going to talk about my experience at Apt Associates, which is not a tech company. Are there folks here who are also, would define themselves not in a tech company? Just so I know, as a couple, so it's sort of a techie crowd. And I want to really tell the story of how something that had nothing to do with my company's industry has blindsided us, and we see about $50 million of our business evaporating in the next couple of years. It's from the tech, onslaught of stuff, and no one was really seeing it. I want to tell you what that was and how we're trying to deal with it as part of the story about what do you do with, there's a million apps in the Google Play Store and in the Apple iStore. How do you even go in and curate what's useful anymore? It's just too much unless this is all you do, and most companies can't afford to have an army of analysts just saying, what the heck's going on out there that we could possibly be leveraging. So I work at Apt Associates, which is down the street in Cambridge. We're just over $1 billion company. We do government consulting for the US government and foreign governments. And essentially any social mission or cause, like healthcare, like we want to reform healthcare, want to deal with homeless veterans, we want to do Census Bureau work. There's all kinds of any sort of a social impact thing. Our team comes in, we do a bunch of research, collect data, analyze something, spit out a report, and sometimes, usually internationally, we'll actually go implement the solution. So we usually give policy choices, like you can overhaul the healthcare system by doing A, B, or C. We recommend A, and sometimes we're asked to go do A. 3 years ago, the company realized, or they recognized, that they're not very good at technology. And to give you a benchmark, when I got there, we were using for email a version of Lotus Notes that was so old, Lotus didn't support it anymore. So that's sort of your benchmark. And that was permeated the whole mentality of technology. And they said, Jeff and my friend Hugh, they said, we want you guys to launch a technology practice, an internal consulting practice, and teach our projects how to do techie stuff. We have about 400 active projects at any one time. So we did what most business consultants tend to do. You hit the road. And we hit a whole bunch of countries and met a whole bunch of projects. We're now at over 200 projects that we've been involved in. And you hear what the customer's needing and you try to shape something. We usually go outside and find tech vendors, subcontractors, software providers, bring them in, match that, make that match and then walk away. Or, basically. And we're all very special snowflakes. Our problems are very unique that no one's ever had them before. We have 400 projects and everyone's like, no, you don't understand. We collect data, then we analyze it, then we spit out a report. And we've heard it so many times. So we came up with a pretty simple model, which is, look, you're only collecting data a couple of ways. It's really not that complex from a platform standpoint. You can only move that data a couple of ways. It's always going to something central. I don't really care what the technology is, but it's going somewhere central. And then you're spitting out, sadly, like PDF reports. One of the most eye-opening information moments for me was Census Bureau asked us to help them design a web strategy moving forward. And their sort of starting statement was, we're one of the largest information repositories in America. We are awesome at collecting and curating data, and we are terrible at sharing it. So we did an assessment, and it came back, and one of my favorite lines to deliver to a client was, I said, do you know that the #1 way that Census Bureau shares all its data is PDF? You collect reams and reams and hundreds of thousands of lines of information, and you put it in a PDF, which is about as unusable from a raw data standpoint as you could get. They had 57,000 PDF documents on their web server. That's how they shared data. And it was a really fun engagement. We got to really work with them to change that. But basically, it's the same process. And once we realized that, partly because we were trying to scale our internal technology team, and partly because I don't really like doing the same thing over and over and over again, we created little product lines. And these are the 4 product lines. I'm not going to kill you with what they are, other than to say we saw the same need again and again and again. And we said, how can we commoditize this? It's always been our strategy. We did not want to build developers. We didn't want a team of 50 developers. Because, and I think you can hear it this morning too, it changes so freaking fast. If I hire a great mobile programmer today, they're almost obsolete next year unless I can keep them super engaged in the cutting edge stuff. It's really hard to stay on top of the technology. It moves so fast. And our company being not like, that's not a core deliverable for us, we said we're not going to do programmers. We're going to do subcontractors, and we're going to be our team's going to be the architects, proposal writers, designers, project managers, and we're going to outsource the work. So we used some open source technologies, WordPress for our basic websites. We now churn those out in less than 5 days when a project wants a website. We've got the design, the branding, the content. I mean, they're special snowflakes, but I'm telling you, I know their navigation on every site by heart. Who we are, where we work, what we do, contact us, about us, that's it. Those are their 5 navs they're always going to go with. It's the same stuff underneath them. So we churn these things out in a couple of days. That's allowed us to drop the price from $15,000 on average when we started engaging with them to $500 and turn it around in a week instead of 6 or 9 months. Now, these aren't awesome websites. I'm not going to lie. They're not the best thing you've ever seen. But they serve the purpose of these projects. What they're trying to do with their website, this meets the need. In mobile data collection, and this is where I'm going to take it from here, we just needed a mobile data collection tool that would work. And to give you a sense of our environment, we're working in sub-Saharan Africa a lot and rural Asia. Lots of power issues, tons of connectivity issues. You have, I don't know, hundreds of different competing languages. So it's very hard to do data collection sometimes. So we found a unique tool that did almost everything we wanted, and we just bought a big old license from them, and they do our data collection. This allows us to take something that most project directors who they're not tech savvy, they don't know how to build a mobile app or what they can do with mobile. This was an obstacle they didn't know how to overcome, and we turned it into, we can literally, an hour after our conversation, I will send you back the tool that you wanted, because it's, we kind of bought into a platform. So the benefits of doing that strategy was mostly to get 90% of our work, to address the 90% of our needs. It's the same stuff. We commoditize it, poof, and now we can sit back and address these really unique technology concerns. And to me, more exciting, we can start looking outside of what our customer is saying and just try to see what do they need, which is a different thing. We all have trouble vocalizing what it is that we really need. If you're not a techie guru, it's hard. You're never going to come to me and say, I want an HTML5 responsive app that, that's not the conversation. So we wanted to find out what the customer actually needs. And here's a couple of our strategies. We said we're going to integrate or buy. We're not going to build internally, which I said before. One of my models has always been, and probably because I never had authority and I don't show up on an org chart anywhere, that you just got to be fast. I can't afford to have the perfect solution. I need the solution that can be delivered to the client in 2 days, because if we have to have a big discussion about it, I probably won't win that battleship battle. So I'm just going to go faster than you. But it's been really effective. I think we're now at 12 people, about 20 million plus in our portfolio, and doing quite well. Another major lesson, and I think this is interesting, to me it was a big takeaway, which is every organization has a different appetite for innovation. In the mobile space in particular, oh my God, is it changing fast. Things that we saw last year that were like, wait, I think this thing's going to happen. That's already last year's news. It's already happened and there's a new thing. You almost can't absorb the changes in social media, the changes in cloud platforms fast enough. And the challenge we found is we have 400 projects. So on this project, we say, oh, here's the solution. And 6 months later, we have another project. We give them a different solution. And this project says, why didn't we get that? And we said, because that wasn't available then. And they said, but this is better stuff. We want to switch midstream. And for a while, we're in this problem of like jumping horses halfway through the race, and found that that's absolutely a good way to die and fail across the board, because people need a certain level of consistency. And in our company, that tolerance for innovation was actually a lot lower than where we started out. We were trying to rapidly innovate every product all the time. They just couldn't consume it, so we had to slow that pace down intentionally. But this allowed us to take stuff that we were doing and hire people at a quarter of the cost and have them build the products, which is great. That's cheaper, better, more scalable. And most important to me, it allows me to do fun stuff instead of cranking out the same thing every day, being selfish. So I started looking at what we call mobile health. And in our company, mobile health is really about data collection. And when I say mobile health, I'm usually talking about in the context of sub-Saharan Africa. What does it look like in Zambia? What does it look like in Nigeria? And it's data collection. And when I started the job, the first mobile project I got involved in was using the Palm Pilot Tungsten E2. This is 3 years ago, by the way. It had not been produced in 2 years. You could go on eBay and find a few used ones, and that's what we were building entire $50 million research projects are based off of trying to scrape together a couple of these and put them in the field. And relative to today's threshold for usability, they're below 0. Great product a few years ago, not anymore. And the use case was something like this. Jeff lives in Boston. I'm going to get my PDA loaded up with a 700-question survey. And then that's not a joke. It's unbelievable, some of these things. I'll fly to Rwanda, and or let's say Nigeria, and I sit with the head of a tuberculosis clinic. And we're going to sit down, and I'm going to talk to you for 7 hours. I have 700 questions. It's going to take hours and hours. I'm going to ask a bunch of questions that sort of insinuate that you're not doing your job well, because this is just the nature of asking questions. And then I'm going to say, thank you very much, and I'm going to leave. And you will probably never see me again at the facility level. And if you switch seats, and imagine now I'm sitting in that facility, Apt Associates isn't the only company doing this, right? There's a lot of development agencies doing this. So my life as a clinician sucks when the people from Boston come, you know? You come here, and the term I use with my team is, it's an information, it's a value vacuum. You just go in and you bye-bye, and you leave. You're leaving nothing for the person you're interacting with. But that's what mobile data collection is in our industry. This is the state of what we do in the development aid industry. You go, you vacuum up all the value, you say goodbye, we're going to go research stuff and find out why you're not doing your job as well as you should, and we're never going to talk to you again. So a year ago, we said we're going to turn this on its head, and we paid our subcontractor, this person who we do the software, does the software for us, we paid him $32,000 and said, if I ask 10 questions, I want a new question type that can take what I've answered and calculate something based on those answers. So it would look like this. It'd say, how many patients did you see last quarter? 100. How many got cured? 75. Your cure rate is 75%. You know, this is not technology that amazing, but it changed the conversation, because now I could say, and it would be color-coded red, yellow, or green. So I would say, your cure rate's 75%. That's well above the national standard. What are you doing that's making your hospital so efficient? Wow, that's a different conversation for this clinician. We've just turned this into an acknowledgement of their value and making this a conversation. And so this got us think. This actually was in a small pilot in Nigeria, and within 2 months of launching this thing, they came back and they wanted a national scale up. And to give you a sense of size, Nigeria population-wise is only about half the size of the United States, or it is about half the size of the United States, so it's not small. And they wanted to roll out to about 1,000 clinics extremely fast, because this interaction was very different for them. But then I sent my, I tend to hire MacGyver types, they're sort of techie, but they're kind of just fix it, figure it out kind of folks. I said, get out of this industry, because this cannot be the best we can do. Go look elsewhere and say what is going on in technology that we should be paying attention to. And they came back and they said, Jeff, this is March of last year. HTML5, man, it's the wave of the future. It's going to be totally different. And the idea, without killing you with too much of the details, is before, if you wanted to build a mobile app, you would have to build it for the Palm Tungsten E2. That's your one distribution platform. And you build it for that thing, and you're limited by what that single device can do. And HTML5 is a standard that would allow web browsers to interpret what you want to do. So instead of programming for 400 potential different handsets, I'm only programming for 7 different browsers. HTML5 is sort of one way to really simplify the programming thing. So now, when we launch a pilot on a PDA, we can switch to a better smartphone every year without changing the underlying stuff. So to me, this has really dropped the price and the ability for me to distribute our apps much further. And then the other thing that's super important for me is that you can tuck a little database inside of an HTML5 app, which means now I don't just ask, how many patients did you see? 100. How many did you cure? 75. Yeah, 75%. I can now say, oh, and I'm looking at your past records, and it shows that this is a great increase from before. What have you done that made that trend change? Or this is how you're doing compared to other communities or other districts or other hospitals of your type, and slice and dice it. It's a full database, so that interaction becomes far richer now. We can have real data-driven, evidence-based conversations about medical practice. Very different than what it started with this sort of information vacuum. And about 3 weeks later, the team came back and said, no, wait, forget it. That's not it. It's universal app building. It's something totally different. So HTML5, which is great, allows you to build a rich content app. But things like PhoneGap, and now it's been, I think, subsumed by Brightcove and other technologies, allow you to build an app once and deploy it onto all these handsets similarly, except a huge additional benefit. When I've got a phone, when I get a phone up there, I can now actually use all the hardware that the thing is sitting on. I can use the camera. I can use the GPS. I can manipulate the altimeter or the gyroscopes. I can use those mechanical things as well as tap into the contact list, phone logs, all kinds of stuff. I can actually write an application that reaches into the physical hardware. And now we're talking multimedia. We can have this interview, and I can take a video of it through this app, share it with the other hospitals of the same type, so you can do knowledge transfer, and just kind of the type of interaction has really gotten rich in my mind. We're getting really excited about this. So I think of this as now the reach has gone all the way into the handset and can use everything in the handset. And then, of course, 3 weeks later, my team came back and said, no, forget it, that's not it. Wait, something bigger. It's called medical mobile devices, and this is going to change everything in our field. And we started looking around, and it's a little hard to see, but up in the upper left, it's an ultrasound wand that plugs into a Windows smartphone. It costs $7,000. A normal ultrasound is $75,000. We flew the company out to look at it, to have them come do a whole demo and present to all our senior leadership. The woman did an ultrasound of herself. It was amazing. You could see her heart beating, wow. Because not only have you cut the cost by 90%, for a rural clinic in Uganda, that's everything. That's the deal. But one of the hardest problems in rural sub-Saharan Africa is you don't have infrastructure. You don't have roads. You don't have landlines. You don't have electricity. So doctors will not go there because there's no money there. Because why would a doctor go there when they can go to the capital and actually make a good living, or go overseas and make a great living? So it's a real problem because you've got people in the communities who need health care. So now I can put a mobile ultrasound in the hands of a community health worker who has very little training. They can go up, they can take the images, shoot it back to a doctor sitting in the capital city who can make a remote diagnosis and say, a little to the left, a little to the right, that's the problem, and then communicate back and forth. And you've been able to sort of, you think about a doctor's schedule and how much time is, paperwork and patient room and chatting with you can now slice it into much finer increments. There's a really exciting healthcare company called WellPoint or WellDoc, I forget. Their whole model is webcam consults. This is in the US. Webcam consults, $40, you get a 15-minute slot, doctor, talk about whatever it is you got. It's over the webcam. No physical structures, no office buildings. This is really neat stuff, this remote diagnosis. And all right, it's a couple other things real quick. You've got blood sugar things that plug into the bottom of the phone, would take your blood sugar and measure that. The little lens here, there's a couple of them. One built by MIT, you can do an eye test and it takes about a minute and gives you your prescription just by looking at your Android smartphone, looking at this thing and hit and go. There's another one where I can take a blood smear, take a different lens, put it on the camera. It will count the cells and say, you have malaria, you don't have malaria. This is not possible before. It's the same Android smartphone. It's literally the same phone we're using for data collection. And so now I'm looking at this imbalance. We're paying, we get them cheap there, so maybe $80 to $120 for a good smartphone. And you add in the training and the other costs to get these things over there and deployed in the field. Let's call it $300 per phone. And all we're doing for $300 in one of the most amazing supercomputers in the history of mankind sitting in rural, middle of nowhere, is we're asking 700 questions and walking away. That is just, that can't be right, So the big picture for us, or our proposal back to the senior leadership of our company was, yes, we get paid for data collection today. That is not where this is going to be in a few years. It can't be. There's way too much value on the other end of the spectrum. And so we pitched that to anyone who would make eye contact in the hallways. We had meetings, we did lunches, we did everything internally we could, because again, we don't have budget and nobody has to listen to us. And what we heard again and again is, that sounds really cool. I mean, this was amazing. We flew the company out with a mobile ultrasound. She's taking ultrasound on a smartphone. And they said, that's cool, but our clients aren't asking for that. And that made me scratch my head. So I want to show you a quick innovation we made, a landscape of what it looks like in Africa, so you get a sense quickly for what we're operating with, and then what innovation we made to try to address this issue.
And a mobile maniac is really big. It's home to more than 1 billion people, speaking more than 1,000 languages, making Africa the most multilingual continent in the world. Let's take a closer look. Meet Uche, an average 18-year-old African and a mobile maniac. Just like millions of other Africans who use their phones to access a variety of innovative, empowering, entertaining, and even life-saving services which have become central to the lives of ordinary Africans. How central? The average sub-Saharan woman touches her hair 37 times a day, but she checks her phone 82 times a day. Rewind 18 years to the year of Uche's birth, and Africa was a very different place. Nigeria, a country with roughly 100 million people, had only 100,000 landlines, and internet penetration was almost zero. Nothing. Zip. Africans had very little access to a variety of essential services. Then, something amazing happened. The first mobile phone network launched in 1994. Things started off a little slow. The most popular phone that year weighed half a kilogram and cost over $2,000. Just 18 years later, however, mobile penetration in Africa is at 65%. There are more mobile phones in Uganda than there are light bulbs. Africa is the second biggest mobile market in the world, and it's the fastest growing too. Smartphones are outselling computers 4-1, and they're getting cheaper and cheaper. Already, more than half of all internet connections in Africa are exclusively on mobile. Investment in mobile infrastructure is also growing, making the development of more services possible and improving accessibility. Mobile is driving Africa's economy. 6 of the 10 fastest growing economies are in Africa. African GDP growth is over 5%. The result of all this change? People like Uche. And he's not alone. More than half of Africa's population is younger than 20. They are the mobile generation. Ready to learn, ready to work, ready to build. They are the generation that's going to change the continent forever. The future starts here.
So I'm not sure what folks' experiences or perceptions of what life is like in sub-Saharan Africa, but that probably wasn't a really good alignment with what your expectations were. And my one little war story I'll say is in February last year, I was on the Congo border in South Sudan, and I have been in some remote places in my varied career. This was, the moon would look like the destination you would vacation to from where I was. It was really in the middle of nowhere. And so for kicks, I pulled up my iPhone and I tried to video Skype my wife. And it was crystal clear with no hiccups. And I just was stunned. I'm probably still stunned at what that was. The rest of the world isn't going to follow the path that America followed or that Europe followed. They have leapt right to, technology-wise, where we are. It's really some interesting stuff. So the challenge that we wanted to solve was, okay, now if I can reach into a phone and anything I can attach to the phone, if that's what the world is going to be, if that's the future of what this little phone device is going to provide, let's try it. So we shopped ideas around, and 200 is probably a modest number. We pitched any idea we could come up with to anyone who'd listen and got told, no, 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 stupid, no, stupid, no. Eventually we had one, and we got a client who said, yeah, see what you can do about tuberculosis diagnostic care. Usually somebody gets analyzed for TB, and it takes 3 to 6 months for their result to be reported to the national ministry. And in that 3 to 6 months, and that's required for them to get the right drugs to get off the certain variants of TB. And in those 3 to 6 months, they're infecting other people, they're getting people sick, it's really bad stuff. So you got 6 months. They said, if you can solve that problem, then we have a product. So we went in. This is a shorter video, but it's the fastest way to explain what we did.
The Cephia Gene Expert rapid TB diagnostic device started rolling out in Nigeria this year. It detects RIF resistance and MDR-TB suspects in about 100 minutes. The Federal Ministry of Health in Nigeria asked, how can we get the most out of this investment? We found that if you add a standard 3G USB modem and configure the GeneXpert's built-in features to send the test results to an internet database application that we created called GX Alert, you could import real-time test results into ETB Manager or another M&E tool. This improves data quality by eliminating transcription errors and shortens reporting time from several weeks to several seconds. And when you configure all of your GeneXperts the same way, Ministries of Health get amazing new capabilities, like a real-time picture of the disease, so they can mobilize the team and provide second-line drugs where they're needed most. They can send email and SMS text alerts for each MDR diagnosis. And they can monitor consumption and expiration of cartridges by device, facility, district, state, etc. Donors and device manufacturers can look at this information across countries to monitor their regional or global efforts as well. So what's fundamentally new here? The lab tech doesn't have to manually transcribe results anymore, and they don't have to push any special buttons to send the results. All of that happens automatically in the background as part of how the GeneXpert records its results. Lab techs don't need extensive training. We created a 58-second video that shows the entire configuration. It's pretty simple. So please explore the GX Alert website, provide some feedback, and join our open source community. Let's make a difference together.
So this was a rapid concept video we put together. Its production quality is somewhat limited. The voiceover, maybe not the best talent, but it was me, I was just kidding. But the goal was, there was this global conference in November, and we said, if we can put this thing together and actually make it work once, then we're going to pitch this at this global conference, and we're going to test the market signal. Do we have value? Are we right about the future of mobile in the medical space or not? And so we pitched this at this global conference, and we're met with an amazing amount of hostility and negativity. Which I was high-fiving everybody, and they said, what are you doing? I was like, that's the best signal you can have. That means this is a threat. If they were quiet or mum, or they're like, I don't see it, then you don't have anything. But all the established players were extremely nervous. And subsequently, we've been invited to every major standards body discussion, all the major conferences to speak. This was mission accomplished because we have been brought to the forefront of the tuberculosis fight globally, our company has, which was a huge win. We spent a total of $39,000 and built this in 6 weeks on open source platforms mostly. The idea was not to sell the product. The idea was to test whether this is the future of medicine in our world, and of mobile in our world. And I think to that case, it was a resounding yes, this has got real legs. We're already in the late stages of receiving a $1 million grant from USAID to scale this up to Vietnam and Mozambique, as well as Nigeria. And we have $12 million of other proposals that we're waiting to hear back on. There's some win ratio we'll attach to that. But that's a pretty good ROI in a less than 6-month effort from start to finish. So we are mobilizing everything we can to address that issue. The big takeaways for me and the big win for me, again, I never really have real authority, is that we've convinced the CEO of a $1 billion company and her major division vice presidents that this is the future. The data collection as we do it now will not be a business in the future. We have to innovate. We have to get ahead of this. Even though we're not tech, we're not mobile, we've got to embrace that this is going to happen with or without us. We're redrafting our major e-health and m-health strategies to address these opportunities. And to me, the scary / interesting part is a $2 SIM card is pretty much all we've got. That's the only technology that you're plugging in there, is going to evaporate at least $50 million of our business in the next couple of years. Because if we're still trying to do the same thing 5 years from now, one of our competitors is going to smoke us because they're going to figure this out. The threat definitely came from outside of our industry, way outside our company. Again, we were on Lotus Notes, so old people didn't even support it anymore. That's where we're at. And then we created a logic model. I can share this afterwards if you're interested about how to do this. Ideally, you start with a problem and then you try to look at the world to address that problem. We didn't have that luxury because we didn't quite know what the problems were. We just sort of sensed an opportunity. So we said, there's something cool happening in mobile. Does this apply? No, 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 no. So eventually we found a problem that fit, and I recognize that's the wrong way to do it, but in the circumstance, it's all we had. But since we've had universal health care, our team for universal health care has said, what can you do in universal health care? Malaria said the same thing. HIV, AIDS, which are different divisions in our company, have come to us and said, what can you do? So now we got problems, and this is way easier to work on, and a lot more business around it. So I think for me, the big takeaways were, we're not a tech company. We don't, as a company, we don't sit and pontificate about social and mobile and analytics and cloud, but it doesn't matter whether you think about it or not. This stuff is happening. It is fundamentally changing the game of healthcare and probably every other industry. I had a nice chat in June with a guy who works at John Deere and was talking about the stuff we're doing. And he said, actually at John Deere, we're putting SIM cards in all of our tractors. And we're monitoring operational performance of our tractors globally. And we can actually do A/B testing of components that we source. So we'll have, and I don't know the tractor mechanics, right? But let's say oil filter here and an oil filter there from 2 different providers. You can see which one breaks down first and how you should negotiate on price back to your suppliers. How much fuel is being used? When should they do a sales call? When is there a service opportunity? And this is John Deere, you know, not what I would expect. So whether you think it's part of your industry or not, you know, I guess it's the advice Glenn gave me on social media. You got to just pucker up because it's here, and you got to do something about it. So that's my experience. Happy to answer questions or, you know, share what I can. And I'd love to hear what you guys, you know, are contemplating or grappling with in your industries. So fire away. Dumbstruck. Nailed it. Okay. Sounds good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it.